Evident in practice for us that if we can play fast, we could be pretty good. So we kind of threw it out there a little bit. We get tired, but I think we're trying to play a little bit faster, a little more pressure defensively, but we haven't been able to sustain it yet, but I think eventually we will. So with that, I'll open it up.
Keep that defensive intensity, especially that you have. Is that something you've been seeing in practice? You said maybe in spurts, but your reaction to what you saw there, especially in the first half?
So I've coached like a variety of ways in my career. So when I was a Division II coach at Ashland, we pressed for 40 minutes just like that. We forced 29 turnovers a game. We were one of the best teams in the country. Scored, I think, 99 a game. So like I like playing that way, but we haven't been able to. And we've toyed with it in practice, but not a lot. And we were good at it in practice, which generally, if you're good at something in practice, it transfers pretty good to the game. So we threw it out there. You know, we felt like, you know, they were playing with one ball handler basically. Now it's risky because you're leaving shooters sometimes, but we feel like, you know, with our team right now, we're not going to win. We're not going to win the league with 5, so we have to win it with 11 or 9, 10, or 11. A little bit like VCU. But, you know, good teams have to be able to play fast, have to be able to play slow. You know, they have to be able to play in a variety of ways. I think we're a little bit more equipped to do that. We have to get a lot smarter, and part of that is we don't have a lot of equity, you know, in the program. So everything's new for them. So like we make mistakes with the wrong guy taking the ball out of bounds, or, you know. But I think that will clean up as we go.
Speaking of new guys, you put Quincy out there with the opportunity at the point, and then you also see Kareem come in and get some minutes too. Your thoughts about those guys in the first half and that early first impression they put out?
So the first scrimmage, we didn't play Quincy all that much because we were mad defensively. We knew he's talented, and I'm allowed to say that, right? What he did in the first scrimmage?
Yeah.
So I better ask Mike. I'm allowed to say what he did in the first scrimmage, Rick? So anyway, he played the last 10 minutes in the extra 10-minute game, and he scored 20 points out of the 24 we had. And we didn't score all that great in the first scrimmage, so I'm thinking, like, I got to be an idiot not to play him because he's a skilled guy. He's talented. And so he played, you know, he's really a point guard. That's really what he is. Now, he's just a good basketball player instinctively, offensively. And then the other 2 freshmen played good. You know, like, you got to give Matouche and Kareem Rozier. Kareem did a really good job until he cramped up. And you know, they give you kind of a little bit of everything.
That pair, I know you've kind of experimented with groups and pairings of guys in the past, but that pair alone, just Ronski and Rozier, like those guys getting that first opportunity and the cohesion they had defensively and offensively, what did you see out of those guys that early?
Well, you know, Matouche originally committed to George Washington, and Coach Christian didn't come back, so it opened it up for us, and we had been recruiting him. He's just a good basketball player. He's a typical European player. You know, he can dribble, pass, and shoot. He's got a good brain. He's had some moments where he struggled, I think mostly physically, you know, like most freshmen, where the grind of the practice is tough on him. I thought he had a very fair 2 weeks, but I thought he played better in the game. And then Rozier is just a happy kid, man. Like, he just goes out there and he keeps everybody happy and he leads them. He's an unbelievable leader, you know. And there's a lot to be said for intangibles and leadership. And you know, for a freshman, he played well. He did a good job. He didn't, you know, his stat line don't look all that great, but he did a good job.
I asked Joe about that steal that turned into the dunk in the first half, and Rozier was probably about as loud as anybody in the crowd after that happened. But the intensity that he brought, and he talked about, he credited you really for the kind of the ethos of everybody sharing together and everybody having that same collective energy. When did you see with this group that they were starting to develop that cohesion?
Well, they've been good. Like they've been good almost daily, every day, as far as just getting along with one another. Like they spend a lot of time in the locker room together. You know, it's a funny thing. This coaching becomes more managing group dynamics than it's ever been. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a mother that was a psychologist. So, like, I understand group dynamics, and sometimes you can't control the group dynamics. You know, it can get away from you. You know, and then it also can also mutate into what we have now. Now, how will that continue when guys are splitting minutes? You know, that's the thing that's always been unique about VCU, for instance. You know, those guys split minutes. And we did it a lot at Akron as well. We had a lot of good players, so they have to split minutes, and some nights you get a lot, and other nights you didn't. Like we talked about with Matoush and Quincy tonight, we said, you guys got a lot of minutes, and I asked him the question, well, why do you think you got more minutes? And the reason was, well, Clark and Day-Day had 2 fouls in the first half, and then Kareem cramped. You know, so they got most of the minutes tonight. Will they get that many the next time? Or, I don't know, but you have to be willing to accept that for the good of the group. I think that's probably the key. And I think Easley's a good example. Like, he's used to playing a lot of minutes. He didn't get a lot of minutes tonight. But, you know, it just wasn't going to be that way for him tonight. And Trey Williams, another example, that played 30 minutes last year and only played maybe 15 minutes tonight. But if you care about winning, that's what you have to do.
Coach, was your plan, because you played 9 guys in the first 6 minutes, was your plan, no matter what the score was, to play 10, 11 guys, or had it been competitive and close, would the rotation gone down to 7 or 8?
It would have been 9, for sure. Like, David Dixon's a really talented guy, but you can see, like, there's some areas that we have to get him better at. But as far as physically, like, he's a top level athlete. And then, you know, Barre didn't play either tonight, you know, and then Tevin didn't play. So we may end up playing a lot of guys. I mean, which is fine with me, because you can sustain your pressure that way. And I felt like we couldn't really sustain it as well tonight as we want to. And there's not a lot of difference between a lot of guys. You know, there's a couple guys that are, you know, like Day-Day Grant, like when you go 8 for 8, you know, he's got to be out there a little longer than some of the others, right?
Keith, what led to that stat line, you think, from Day-Day? Him just taking good shots, or was it? What did
Well,
you see?
I thought in the last 2.5 weeks he's really started to play really good, like really good. And I think he's been really simple. Like, you think about it, he just shot open shots. Now, with his stroke, when he shoots open shots, they're going in. Like, when he shot it, I felt like everyone was going in. I don't know about you guys, but that's how it's been every day in practice. If he's open, he's making it. And then, you know, the more, sometimes, you know, we have to make sure that he just keeps it simple. And that's why I didn't really want to play him at the point. I just felt like why waste his energy when we need the shooting? You know, that's been a missing piece for us since I've been here. We haven't shot the ball at a high level since I've been here. So I didn't want to drain him energy-wise, handling the ball and that. Let the other 2 guys handle the ball. I think that's the other thing with McGriff. He'll shoot the ball better when he doesn't have to play as much point either. He's a good shooter too. So that's the thought process behind what I've been doing.
Following up on that point, Keith, speaking with Day-Day earlier before the season started, he mentioned that you guys were on him earlier in the process recruiting. Just how important was that loyalty that you showed him in the long run, and how is that maybe helping out from a loyalty perspective now?
I don't necessarily know if we showed him more loyalty than he showed us. He showed us loyalty. He showed us Northeast Ohio loyalty. You know, because we're all from the same area. Me, Drew, him, Terry, Wygand, you know, Ricky's from Youngstown. So he knew us, and his people knew us as well. So, like, to me, it wasn't us showing him loyalty. We knew he could play, average 17 points a game. We needed him more than he needed us, you know, and I think that's what makes him special. He's been really a pleasure to coach. Like, he's come to work every single day, and you could talk to him and tell him, and he listens. And, you know, a lot of guys that have a lot of success nowadays, they don't listen, but he does. So I think it was a little more one-sided. He showed more loyalty to us than we did to him. I mean, we showed loyalty, don't get me wrong, but we showed loyalty because we wanted a good player. So.
Coach, one thing you focused on a lot last year was the guards, maybe too much dribbling and not enough passing, and just the ball movement wasn't quite where you wanted it. Tonight you had 8 different guys tally assists. How do you feel about that?
I think we could play better together than that. I think when Brewer comes back, we'll really get our assist total up. He's probably the best passer on our team. So again, like, it'll be a juggling act, but he's a good player. And again, we don't know, like, you know, how that's going to come along, but he's going to be a good player for us this year. I mean, I think he was 6th in the country in pick and roll offense last year, and before he was, you know, had the appendix, he was playing well. So that'll change the dynamic a little bit too.
When you're playing against a guy like Bannon, who can put up 15, 16 a night, how much of what we saw tonight was maybe game plan as far as, you know, maybe trying to stop him? How much of that was just organic and how things went?
We did a good job the first half. I thought we did not a very good job the second half. Understandably so in some regards. You know, he's a straight scout guy. Like, you got to keep him off his right shoulder in the post. You can't let him go to his left hand. You can't let him drive you right. You got to wall him up. He can shoot the three, so you got to cover the ball screens a certain way, which we did in the first half, and we didn't do such a good job in the second half. But he's a good inside-out player, and in their league, he'll beat a lot of people up. You know, because he's really finesseful. He has a good understanding of what he is. And then the other big kid from the transfer from Colorado State, he's a hard matchup too, because 50% of his shots are threes. He's a career 40% three-point shooter. So if you take the switch with him and we get a little guy on him, he's 240 pounds. That's a problem, right? So we covered him a specific way as well, and we did a pretty good job the first half, but not such a good job the second half. But again, part of that is just the way the game was, I think. That's something we got to get better at.
Now, I know there's been a lot of talk already about the trap and the results from that, but just in the half court, how did you feel about the effort of those guys getting around, especially in the first half, cutting off passing lanes and really showing that effort to make it difficult for them to get big balls?
Felt like we tried hard, especially in the first half. I thought we gambled a lot in the second half, which, that's a funny thing. Like, Trey Clark's a really good defensive player, but you have to live with some of his running around. You know, sometimes he runs around. That's why we're trying to press more, because then that allows him to run around. But when you get in the half court, then you have to be more solid. I thought we gambled a little bit. Again, the score of the game could dictate that a little bit. I'm not making excuses for him, but we have to get better at that. And then we have to keep ramping up our pressure, whether it's in the full court or the half court. I think that's going to be, if we can ramp up our pressure and really take people out of what they want to do, because they're primarily a set team. They run a lot of sets. So if we can ramp that up and take them out of their sets, I think we become a better defensive team. And we have shot blocking ability. You know, when we get, Dixon can block shots, Trey Williams can block shots, Reese can block shots, Chabi can block shots. So we have protection at the rim, which is something we didn't really have last year.
Coach, recently you guys announced a leadership council with certain key players being part of it. Considering what's happened the last 2 years and the fact that there's going to be, a question of minutes with all the depth you have, how important is that going to be for this team this season?
You can't win without good leadership. Like, we manage their team. That's kind of how I view it. Like, I'm the manager of their team, but it's their team. So they have to self-police themselves. And they have to motivate themselves, and they have to discipline themselves. Like, we had an issue where a guy overslept before a scrimmage, and so we went to the leadership council and asked them what they wanted to do. Right, and I always give them my opinion or my advice, but ultimately it's their team. So I think that's managing group dynamics in the modern era now, right? A lot of coaches 20 years ago would never think about that, right? But we have a bench captain too, JJ Cole Williams, which that's important. It's an important job. It's really an honor job. It's important because guys sulk on the bench sometimes, right? So his job is to make sure that nobody's doing that. So leadership's important, really important, and you have to teach it. And I will say this, some of it is born. Like Kareem's leadership, we haven't had to teach him anything. He does it on his own. But you have to cultivate it.
Coach, we asked Joe Reese about the preseason prediction for Duquesne finishing last and how it's been a motivation tool from him for the team and by you. Just one game, and obviously anything can happen. Last year, beat Ryder and things fell apart afterwards. But does it feel different for you guys after tonight that things are going to be different, that you guys are going to be much more competitive in league play, or is it still just going to take it day by day?
So I really don't talk about last year much because I really don't want to think about it. Again, I thought it was an aberration. I thought, we had, I've never lived through it in my coaching career. So does it affect you? Yeah, you have self-doubt. Everybody has self-doubt. But we knew we had to revamp it. And then you hope you make more positive decisions than negative decisions. Recruiting's a funny deal. Sometimes you can be wrong. But if you're 80% right, then usually you win 80% of your games. And so we felt like we made a lot of good decisions on this. We spent a lot of time at it. And I think while we've been hit really hard with the transfer portal, we took advantage of it too. So, and then we also got some really good young ones, which now the trick is how much they like it here to stay, which I think they'll stay. I believe they'll stay. They're good quality humans.
Keith, how do you view the opportunity Friday night in Kentucky?
I really haven't thought much about it. Like, I know that sounds, I was just I kind of go one game at a time, but look, at my uncle played against Kentucky, I think in either the finals or the national semifinals, so this has been going on a long time, right? Kentucky is Kentucky. Arguably there's not many that can even put themselves in the same breath as Kentucky over the years, right? Probably UCLA, but over a 80-year time period, there may be nobody better than them, right? So we'll look at tape. I've watched very little. We know it's going to be simple. We know they have good players. We just got to go in there and figure out a way to win, whatever that may be. Remember, I told you sometimes you got to play fast, sometimes you got to play slow, sometimes it's got to be a combination of the two, sometimes it's got to be zone, man, sometimes it could be full court pressure. We have to find their puncture point, really. And but it's a good opportunity, It's not going to make or break our season. I mean, I think a lot of people start talking if we beat them, but it's not going to help us in reality of winning the Atlantic 10 championship, really, right? Because it's a non-league game. But it'll be fun. Be fun for our guys, right? So.
Did it?
Good.